Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath. We're thankful once again that we're here this morning to give Iyar praise and honor because it's all of him and none of us. Our subject today is the Kushite Man of Yahudah. The Kushite Man of Judah. The name is such that it's quite interesting. It is what they would call an ethnonym. An ethnonym is a name used to refer to an ethnic group, tribe, or a people. But how do you get a Kushite man to be a man of Judah? And that's the intrigue of our study today. We want to look at that because scholars and theologians and others, when they see the name Yehudi or Jehudi as it's done in the English, they think to themselves that this man must be a proselyte. He cannot be a Jew. And so we want to look at the word this morning and try and understand exactly what it is. And we have to be very careful when we study the word, because commentators and others throughout time, they have given their own understanding, and we are like people drinking from a stream, but we are downstream. Think of it that way, that the apostles and the prophets, they were drinking upstream, but we are drinking way down in the times of Laodicea downstream. And so when you're drinking downstream from its natural sources, particularly in areas where there might be a livestock pastures, the likelihood of an animal falling into that stream and you having to drink from downstream mean that the purity of that water might be such that it's not the same as if you were drinking at the reservoir, the end of the reservoir. And so this morning we want to go drinking, at the end of the reservoir, the word of Yah, because I have found out that when you drink downstream, you have to be aware of doctrinal toxins and theological contamination and cultural pollutions that have affected the public health of our churches. So, as an advisory, let's see how we might ameliorate the denominational pollutants in our water supply, because this is our water. And so we come here this morning because we are thirsty. So come with me to the book of Jeremiah, and we will read chapter 32, a few verses there to give you an idea of the context of our study today. And not only that, if you are going to understand the subject, you must understand the geopolitics that was playing out in prophecy at that time. So let's look at Jeremiah chapter 32, and we will read from verse 1. The word that came to Jeremiah from Yahweh in the 10th year of Zedekiah, the king of Judah, which was the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar. For then the king of Babylon army besieged Jerusalem, and Jeremiah the prophet was shut up in the court of the prison which was in the kings of Judah's house. Now, understand what's happening here. Jeremiah the prophet is preaching, and his preaching is such that the people, the king certainly, cannot bear to hear what Jeremiah is saying, because Jeremiah is letting Judah knows that Yah is raised up Babylon as a chastising rod, an instrument of judgment to punish Judah. Clearly, the 10 northern tribes, they've already been taken by the Assyrians in 722. And so we are now about 100 years subsequent to that, and this is the first besieging of the city of Jerusalem that we are looking at. Yah has raised up Nebuchadnezzar to come and besiege the city. He did it in 3 different phases. The last time, the 3rd phase, was when he destroyed the temple that Solomon built. And both Solomon's temple and the second temple that Herod built, both of them were destroyed on the 9th day of Ab. That's not a coincidence. That's prophecy playing out. So we just want you to know some of the things that were happening then. What is happening here is that the counselors to Zedekiah in the court of the king, they are pro-Egypt. And therefore, they are looking for Egypt to come and, that's the land of Ham, to come and support. But Jeremiah, the preacher, is letting them know it won't work. Because Yah is the one who has done this. He has called Nebuchadnezzar to come and, as a chastising rod, to chastise the kingdom of Judah. And so, as a consequence, they locked him up in prison. That's what the word here said. He says, verse 3, for Zedekiah, king of Judah, had shut him up, saying, wherefore dost thou prophesy, and say, thus saith Yahweh, behold, I will give this city into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall take it. That's what Jeremiah is preaching. And Zedekiah, king of Judah, shall not escape out of the hand of the Chaldeans, but shall surely be delivered into the hand of the king of Babylon, and shall speak with him mouth to mouth, and his eyes shall behold his eyes. Now, Jeremiah is saying that not only will he take you to Babylon, but you're going to have to contend with him eye to eye. He will stare you in the eye, and you will speak to him mouth to mouth. At that time, what you need to understand is Egypt had been that empire, that world superpower. Thereafter, we had Assyria, who took over, and now we have the emerging Babylon that Daniel speaks about, emerging as a world power. But Judah is looking to Egypt, that former superpower, for help. But the prophet is saying it won't work. Just submit yourself. You're going to be down there for 70 years. Just go. And this phase that we are reading here, it's the first phase wherein men like Daniel was taken with his friends to Babylon. It's in this phase. So that's what we're dealing with. So that gives you a backdrop. It gives you an idea of the geopolitics that was playing out through prophecy at that particular time. And so Jeremiah was preaching because he's a contemporary of King Josiah, even as Zephaniah is a contemporary of the same. And so I don't want you to forget our subject. We are looking at all this to give you the context to our subject, and we're looking at it both connotatively and denotatively. So when we look at it denotatively, we say Cush means an Ethiopian. It means one who is a dark skin, one who is black. And because of the connotative term of the word Judah or Jews today, people say, well, those from Europe, those who were taken under the Balfour Agreement in 1948, and are currently, some of them are in Israel, they are the Jews. And we do not wish to contend with anybody other than to present what the scriptures have to say. That's how we validate or authenticate what we have to say. The word says that if they speak not according to the word, then there is no light in them. And if truth cannot be spoken in a church, then I beg to suggest, where else can it be spoken? Therefore, I invite you to come with me, because we need to look at this issue square on. Come with me to the book of Bereshit, that's Genesis, and we're going to look at chapter 10, and we're going to dilate upon a few verses here. It says, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were born after the flood the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphav, and Togarmah, and the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. Now hold it there. And let's go back and put our light on verse 2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Magi, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tyrus. And as we read on in verse 3, it says, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. Now we know that those people claiming today to be Jews, and I say this respectfully, 92% we're told are Ashkenaz. They're Ashkenazi. But listen to what Moshe or Moses wrote for our admonition in verse 5. Moses says, and remember, Moses grew up in Egypt. He was born there. He was married to an Ethiopian. Not only that, Moses was king of the Kushite before he went to Midian. We need to understand not only what is happening here, but the historical context through which these things were written and were playing out. In verse 5, Moses said, by these were the hives of the Gentiles divided into their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families in their nations. So Moses is letting you know and letting me know that the Ashkenazis, along with the siblings here, they make up the Gentiles. Remember, we just looked at the descendants of Japheth. And Moses is letting us know that Japheth is the progenitor of the Gentiles. So if we do a quick analysis deductively, because we haven't spent our time in the last few minutes looking at the sons of Noah and their three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. If Japheth, or the descendants of the Gentiles, then implicitly in that statement, Ham and Shem are not. That's deductive reasoning. And so the whole thing is consolidated even more when we read the book of Amos and we read chapter 7 and chapter 9, I should say, and verse 7. Come with me there. Amos, are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, said Yahweh? Have not I brought up Israel out of the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Captor, and the Syrians from Ker? So here we have Amos the prophet saying, are you not the same to me, O Yisrael, as the same as the Ethiopian, the same as the Kushite? That's interesting. And it is so interesting, it demands our attention. It demands our attention. So we need to define what we mean by a Jew. Because you remember the story when Jacob, that's Jacob, went all the way down to his mother's brother to spend time, and he fell in love with Rachel. And you may well say that was love at first sight. And he was so much in love that he was prepared to work 7 years, 7 complete years, so that he could get her in marriage. But remember how he got to that place. He played a trick on his brother by stealing his birthright blessing. But when he got there, he realized that his uncle was also a trickster, and gave him Leah, that's Rachel's sister, as a wife because she was older than Rachel, and she had 3 sons, and then the word says she conceived again, and she had a 4th son, and she called his name Judah or Yehudi. Now, I want you to get that, because when you hear people say they are Jews, the obvious question to ask them is, how do you know? Because unless you're a descendant of Judah, you're not a Jew. Are you with me? All Jews are Israelites, but not all Israelites are Jews. So unless you are sure, authenticated descendant of Judah, biblically, you're not a Jew. And the Apostle Paul makes that glaringly clear. He says, he who is a Jew outwardly is not a Jew. And so when we're dealing with the biblical Jew, we're dealing with somebody who is a descendant of Judah. And when we're dealing with Israel, we're dealing with the Israel of Yah, found in Galatians 6:16. And we're saying, unless you accept Yeshua as your personal savior and you're obedient to him, then don't make any false claim that Abraham is your father. In Galatians 3:29, it says that if you be in Yeshua, then and only then are you Abraham's seed. We need to understand that. So when I talk about Yehudi, that hethnonym that is ascribed to the man we found in Jeremiah chapter 36, who was the one who was called to read the scroll before the king, you know that's not an ordinary occasion. What intrigues me above everything else is that Yehudi, that Kushite man, that Ethiopian Judite, that man from Ethiopia is also the same man who is in Judah. He's unique. Why? He's the only man in the Bible whose name is Yehudi. Only man. And so that ought to make us stop and think. And so when the scholars and the theologians, they read this and they see that he's a Cushite, they say he has to be a proselyte. He couldn't have been born there. But the word is unequivocal. The word is univocal. It is definitive in saying this man is a man of Judah, but he's a Cushite. And that opens up a wider this debate, discussion for students of the word to delve in. And that's why we come this morning, even as the Berean, to rightly divide the word of Yah. We must. Because as I indicated when I started, that when you start to drink downstream, you may be drinking water that someone else had passed on to you, not knowing it was contaminated as it was coming down the mountain of the ages, down through the forceps of your tap. And so we owe ourselves a duty of care to examine the word. And that's what we're doing. So here is the point. That the majority, it seems, of the people that lived at that particular time in that era when Judah was taken, they were people of bronze complexion. Why do I say that? Why do I say that? Note this. They were taken to Babylon under the rule of Nebuchadnezzar. But as you and I read Daniel chapter 5, we come to understand through the prophet Isaiah that there was a man 150 years before he was even born called Cyrus, who Yah had called from the womb that he would be the one to liberate his people after 70 years and send them back to Israel. And so we understand that he was a Mede. And so when the Medes and the Persian came and they took Babylon that night, that fateful night when Belshazzar was having a party for his nobles, and they diverted the Euphrates River. That's what Cyrus did with his troops. And they scaled those impregnable walls in Babylon and took the city, and Babylon fell. We understand that the Medes and the Persians were in power now. And thereafter, we have Queen Esther, who was a Jew, but she was queen of Persia. She was queen of Iran. Are you with me? And so, as you read Esther chapter 1, let's go there, in case you might think that these things are contrived. Esther 1, or may we say Hadassah, read Hadassah, that's her name. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, I'm really making the point for you so you see the interplay here of politics and how kingdoms are raised up and kingdoms are dislodged prophetically and to unfold before our very eyes the truth of what the word of Yah said. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus which reigned from India to Ethiopia. Did you get that? It says the kingdom of Media Persia at that time, after they took Babylon, it stretched from India to Ethiopia. You don't have to conjecture what the coloration of the people at that time were like. It says from India to Ethiopia, from Kush to India. It's in the word. And so we are saying, because the word is saying that these people were now under Persia rule, they are the same people that were taken from Israel, hear me, and brought to Babylon. But because Babylon is now captured by Media Persia, we must understand that the original people here, according to the word of Yah, they were people of bronze color. It's there. So unless you have a penchant for believing error, it is well established, both by the scriptures and history, reflected in the DNA of the relationships between genetics, geography, and language, show that the Ethiopian is the same as an Israelite. Even as the prophet Amos said, and perhaps you struggle with that, so I would invite you to come with me to the book of Revelation. That's Chiseon, because they don't always tell it like this when they speak to you in some of the institutions that we call places of worship, church. You see, the common view of Al-Kabulan, that's Africa, the Hebrew Africans, has been predominated over time by way of a Eurocentric perspective. It has little to do with the integrity of the scriptures, which we are here calling upon this morning. It is a view that has preponderantly been mistaught by scholars and theologians, particularly because it projects, as I indicated, this Eurocentric prevarication and obfuscation. Are you with me? An obfuscation of the word of Yah. So the word has long since declared, has shown that Yah's people, and I mean his dispersed people, are the people of Ethiopia. The people of far antiquity are the bronze stock of Shemitic Negroes and Hamitic Cushites. Did you get me? I'm saying this because the words, and come with me to Revelation as I invited you to come. Revelation 1. And you know the story here very well. This is Johanan, or John, who is here on the island of Patmos in the Aegean Sea. And he's here, again, like Jeremiah, because of the word that he speaks. Others don't like it. You know, truth has always been an offense. You know that. Whenever you speak truth, somebody gets upset. And so John here is speaking, and he's preaching about Yeshua, and they put him in a pot of oil. And the Emperor Domitian puts him in this oil. And strangely, it didn't hurt him. And so he banished him to the island of Patmos, where he gets the vision. We need to understand that. And so in getting the vision, John is told to write down the things that he has seen. And what must he do? He must send what he has seen to the 7 assemblies, the 7 churches. Where were they? In Turkey, Asia Minor. Bring them there. So John is here speaking to us this morning and letting us know what he saw. Come with me to verse 12 of the first chapter of the book of Chiseon, that's Revelation. John says, and I turned to see the voice that spoke with me, and being turned, I saw 7 golden lampsticks. I saw 7 golden candlesticks, or perhaps we should say lampstands. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, John said, I saw one that looked like the Son of Man. Remember, John is writing this as he sees it, as he remembers it, because he's told, he's commissioned to write. John here is a scribe, and he's writing what the Ruach, the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh has told him. Write it down. And he's writing. He says, I saw one clothed in the garment to his foot, girt about the paps with golden girdle. His head and his hairs were like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. And his feet were unto fine brass, burnished brass, as if they were burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. Let's hold it there. Let's see what we can extrapolate from this passage. John said, I saw the Messiah. And when I saw him, I saw a man that has hair like wool. And you can conjecture whether he was talking about color or texture. You can do that. But this you can't conjecture on. John says, when I looked at his feet, he had feet that was bronze. Not only light bronze, he said, as if it was burned in a fire. That's what John said. And you know that John took all this and he gave it to the 7 assemblies. We being in the last one we call Laodicea, that's the last candlestick. So my question to you, Laodicea, how is it that John gave you this and you read this, you understood it, and then you hang in the gallery of your church a drawing produced by Michelangelo, the Italian, saying Yeshua is a European, he's long, blue, white hair with blue eyes. How could you do that? That's contrary. It's an aberration from the scripture. So we go back to our subject, the Kushite Man of Judah. It's in the word. And we've got to understand that. So let's look at this even deeper. Let's mine this thing. Come with me to Bereshit chapter 48. Bereshit chapter 48. And we will look at verse 14, reading on. And the word says, and Israel, that's Jacob, you remember, after he wrestled with the angel, his name was changed. A lot of people are changing their name to Israel. They have the name, but they don't have the character. Shame on you. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head. Let me hold it there and just remind you, Ephraim and Manasseh were born in North Africa. Are you with me? Their mother was an Egyptian princess, Ephraim and Manasseh. So it matches not by way of genetics. What color Joseph was, we know Joseph was like his brothers. Olive skin, bronze, like you and I. We're not preaching color, but we're just dividing the word rightly. It says these two North African boys, Jacob, before he died, he decides to bless them. So he puts his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Manasseh, contrary to what Joseph or Joseph wanted. But the word says he put his hand wittingly, meaning he knew what he was doing. For Manasseh was the firstborn, and he blessed Joseph and said, Yah, before whom your fathers Abraham and Isaac did walk, the Yah which fed me all my life, long into this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be on them. Did you get that? Jacob, whose name is Yisrael or Israel, when he blessed Ephraim and Manasseh, he said, put my name on them. So Ephraim and Manasseh became Israel. Remember, they were born in Africa. They were born in North Africa, Egypt. But as I indicated, it didn't matter what color Joseph was, because he was married to a black woman. Genetically, the child would be of that color, because we have learned through genetics, through DNA, that black skin is dominant and the lighter skin is recessive. You can indeed get the recessive from the dominant, but you cannot get the dominant from the recessive. It's in the word, it's there. So he blessed it. Now, let me ask you a question. These other tribes, Simeon, Reuben, Levi, Naphtali, and Gad, and so on, did they get this blessing? No. No more than Esau got Jacob's blessing. What's my point? My point is only Ephraim and Manasseh are Israel and their descendants. The others didn't get that. We're told in Genesis 49 and verse 10 that Judah got the scepter, the ruling scepter, whereas the birthright promise, the land, was given to these North African boys. Did you get me? And so we're deep in theology now when we look at what is happening in Gaza. We're deep in theology, which is unfolding itself and framing the events that are happening over there in Israel. So when Israel left the 10 tribes, and it wasn't just 10 tribes, you know, perhaps it was less than that. And the reason I say that, when we read in 1 Kings chapter 10 that Jeroboam put up idols in Bethel and in Dan, The Levites, they left and they came south. So they joined Judah. So it wasn't all 10 tribes, some of them. So we need to understand the dynamics of that situation also. So when the Assyrians took the 10 tribes away in 722, they never came back. But Judah came back after 70 years. But before we look at that, come with me back to the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah, and we will now look at chapter 36. Jeremiah chapter 36. The word says, and it came to pass in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that the word came unto Jeremiah from Yahweh, saying, take thee a scroll of a book, and write therein all the words that I have spoken unto thee against Israel, and against Judah, and against all the nation, from the day I spake unto thee, from the days of Josiah, even unto this day. Told he was a contemporary of Josiah. So Yah is saying, everything that I've ever said to you, put it in a book. Write it down. Write it down. But remember, Jeremiah is locked up in prison because he's preaching the truth. You can always know when you're doing something right. It always offends someone. Are you with me? If you're just tickling people's ear, they love that. Most people, they just want a religion of convenience. And we see that all the time, but we are now coming to that time in history, that time of trouble, when only those who can endure will last. You don't stop at the roadside during the course of a marathon and drink Gatorade. You must finish that course. Paul the apostle said, I have run that course. I have finished the race, and there laid up for me a crown of righteousness, but not only for me, for you too, and for me. And so we must understand what was happening here. Jeremiah is preaching that kind of a, pre-John the Baptist message. You can't have your brother's wife. It's illegal. And we see that in the churches today where people are having other people's wives and other people's husbands. And that's the greatest theft there is. But the government and the churches say, it's all right. It's not all right. Don't let anyone deceive you by any means. So Jeremiah is told here to write it in a book. Now, Jeremiah is in prison, so he has to speak this word to a scribe, to somebody who writes for him. And so Baruch is this person. Now, I cite Baruch not only because he's here, but because he wrote in Baruch chapter 2 and verse 30 that in these last days, the Jews, the captured Jews, when they're in the land of their captors, it's then they will find out and come to know themselves who they really are. Because when we read in Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 68, what does it say? It said, Yah said, I am going to, if you don't obey me, I am going to take you back to Egypt in ships. The word there, Egypt, means bondage, symbolic of bondage. Now, my question to you, which other group of people group, have ever been taken in slavery to the Americas and to Europe other than the people to whom the word here is referring this morning, and we call them the Kushites? Now, you also have to remember historically that a great many of these people, when Yeshua gave the warning, and it started even before that in Jeremiah time, that when you see Jerusalem surrounded by troops, flee to the mountain. Many of the Negroes, Hebrew Negroes, who were Jews, well-to-do Jews, they fled to Africa. They fled to Benin, to Ghana, to Guinea, which was then known as the land of Judah. That's where they fled to, West Africa. And so historically, this is where many of them were picked up on ships and brought to the Americas as slaves. So Baruch is saying, the same man who wrote for Jeremiah is saying, in the last day, these people will come to know, despite the teachings, the misteachings of the Europeans, that they are Gentile. Baruch said they will know who they are, that they are not Gentile. It's the Japhethites who are Gentile. And that's what the word says. And so keep your finger in Jeremiah, because I just want to consolidate a point for you, in that I want you to turn with me to the book of Stephanus. Who? Stephanus. We call what? Zephaniah. And what did he say in chapter 10 in Zephaniah? It says what? It says that in that day, Iyar is going to do what? Iyar is going to allow let's read. Well, before I even read chapter 3, let me read chapter 1 for you, because we're not in any haste. It's a Sabbath. And neither is Iyar. Iyar wants you to understand his word. Chapter 1, verse 1. The word of Yahweh, which came unto Zephaniah, the son of Kushite. Remember, this is a prophet. And the word is saying he is a son of Kushite. We just established earlier that Kushite means black. Ethiopian. So he's the son of Kushite, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, and the son of Ezekiah. Ezekiah is from Judah, one of the good kings of Judah. So he traces and he gives you 5 generations, which is kind of strange. But he wants you to know that he is from the king line of Judah, but he's a Cushite. Don't miss that. Which is our subject today, the Kushite man of Judah. Here it is. Zephaniah wants you to know that Ezekiah, the king of Judah, who opposed the Assyrian when they came, and Yah blessed him, the same man who was sick, and Yah healed him, is in the line of his ancestors, and he is the son of Cushi. Now, when preachers of a different era or of a different nationality or of a different prejudicial preference, they see this, they say things like, oh, this must be a nickname, or he must have been a proselyte. No. As I indicated before, the word is univocal. It is definitive. You cannot equivocate this. So let me take you back now to chapter 3, just to conclude that point. We're going to read verse 9 and 10 of chapter 3 of Zephaniah. It says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language. He's going to what? Yah says in the last day, I'm going to turn the people back to a pure language, a pure tongue. That's Hebrew. What? People sometimes say to us, well, why are you going that way? You know, you say things like Yeshua rather than Jesus. Now, you really want to know? Well, 500 years ago, there was no J in the alphabet. He couldn't have been called Jesus. When the angels came and spoke to the shepherds at night, they said to the shepherd, his name shall be called Yeshua, not Jesus. And we call his name Yah, not God. God is a pagan name. That's the name the Canaanites use. And he's not a British baron, so he's not a lord. So we don't use that. Are you with me? And so he's going to give us a pure language. And moreover, we also established earlier that Nimrod is the son of Cush. And in chapter 11 of Genesis, we read that up until that time, the time of the tower building, the whole world had one language. That language was Hebrew. So Yah said the same language that existed back there in Genesis, I'm going to give my people at the end of time. And you say, well, you know, we are English. We speak English. And I say to you, if the world had one language, then English must be a derivative of the Babylonian confusion. It has to be, says the word. And so Zephaniah says, for then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahweh to serve him with one accord. Verse 10, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. What? From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliant, even the daughter of my dispersed, shall bring me an offering. The people of Ethiopia from that area, he said, they are my dispersed people. We know what dispersed means, don't we? Scattered. You hear some people say, the lost tribe. Not at all. They're not lost. Yah knows where they're from. He knows where they are. That's why he said he's going to round them up. Let's go there. Isaiah chapter 11 in verse 11. Yah says that, and it shall come to pass in that day, that's the end time, that Yahweh will set his hand again the second time. Did you hear me? He said the second time. He's talking about the same people, but these are the descendants of them who were in Egypt. He said that was the first Exodus. There is a second Exodus taking place, but this Exodus is not physical, it is spiritual. The people will understand who they are. I'm going to round them up a second time to recover the remnants of my people, which shall be left from Assyria. Well, let's look where they're coming from so that we can validate who they are. He says they are coming from Assyria, from Egypt, that's North Africa, and from Pathos, that's Egypt too, and from Cush, that's from Sudan, that's from Ethiopia and other parts of Africa, and from Elam, that's Iran, that's Persia, and from Shinar, we know that's Babylon, and from Amos, and from the islands of the sea, that may well be the Philippines and also the Caribbean islands. You know, we conjecture there. But the point is, we see no reference here of anybody coming from Europe calling themselves Jews. At least it's not recorded by Isaiah, the royal prophet. It's not. So if we're going to divide the word rightly, we must say what Yah told the prophets to write. We must not conjecture aimlessly and perpetuate teachings that are erroneous. We mustn't do that. So come back to Jeremiah chapter 36. That's our base text. And so Jeremiah was told to write down, and he wrote it down, but he couldn't read it, so he gave it to Baruch to read. Come with me to verse 9. And it came to pass in the 5th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah. So you notice here that Josiah and Zephaniah, that Kushite prophet, they're relatives. What do you mean they're relatives? Well, Josiah is the son, Jehoiakim is the son of Josiah. Josiah is the son of Ammon. Ammon is the son of who? Manasseh. Manasseh is the son of Hezekiah. And so when Zephaniah traces his ancestors, he traces it all the way to Hezekiah. So it says that Josiah king is also a relative of Zephaniah, who is the son of Cushi. So what color, may you ask, Josiah was? And therefore, you are almost compelled to conclude that the majority of the people in the word here are people of bronze color. It is not saying that other people were not there, but it is saying that they are ancillary to the process. That's what the word wants you to know. So when you know who you are, Yeshua said, that truth will set you free. Nobody can tell you anymore that you are a Gentile when you're not. And so let's read on. Verse 10, then read Baruch in the book, the words of Jeremiah, in the house of Yahweh, in the chamber of Gemariah, the son of Shaphan, the scribe, in the Iyar court, at the entry of the gate of Yahweh's house, in the ears of all the people. Did you hear that? Baruch the scribe. Now, scribes were like professional writers. I don't know why people don't write these days, because we can, with our pens, capture scenes and events. And we can then present them to people and bring them to the scene of the crime. That's what he was doing here. So writing is important. You know, I see people write on Facebook and all those books, but we should write with the intent of getting out in the Lamb's Book of Life, or the Book of Remembrance. That's the only book that matters to us here, the Book of Remembrance and the Book of Life. And so they read what Jeremiah told Baruch to write. And he said, verse 11, when Micaiah, the son of Gemariah, the son of Shaphan, had heard, remember, Shaphan was one of those who found the book of Deuteronomy that was lost in the hand. Remember that. And heard out of the book, when he heard what was read out of the book of the words of Yahweh, then he went down into the king's house, into the scribe chamber, and lo, all the princes sat there, even Elishama the scribe, and Delaiah the son of Shemaiah, and Elnathan the son of Hakor, and Gamaliel the son of Shaphan, and Zedekiah the son of Ananiah, and all the princes. So Micaiah was struck by what he heard. And so they went down to see the princes. Then Micaiah declared unto them all words that he had heard when Baruch read the book into the ears of the people. They think this is the word of Yahweh. You know, some people, they say, well, where do you get that? And you say, well, this is God's word. So who wrote it? And they say, well, it's a man write it. So, no, if Yah said it and you wrote it, it's still Yah's word. Therefore, all the princes sent Yahudah. Sent who? Yahudah. That's the man, the Kushite man from Judah. Did you hear me? That unique man, the only man in the Bible with that name, but he's a Cushite and he's a man of Judah. They sent him, the son of Netaniah, the son of Shemaliah, the son of who? Cushi. Unto Baruch, saying, take in thine hand the roll wherein thou hast read in the ears of the people, and come. Yahudah, Kushite Man of Yahudah, go and get it and bring it come. Now, to ask a Kushite man of Judah, who is an official of the king of Judah, it's no small task. This man is going to read the scroll in the ears of the king of Judah. Today they want you to believe that your ancestor is a Gentile, when the word says contrary. We ought to say boo to them, should we not? Let's read it again for emphasis. Verse 14. Therefore all the princes sent Yahudah, or Jehudi in the English, the son of Netaniah, the son of Shelemiah, the son of Cushi, unto Baruch, saying, take in thine hand the roll wherein thou hast read in the ears of the people, and come. So Baruch, the son of Neriah, took the scroll in his hand, and came unto them, and they said unto him, sit down now, and read it in our ears. So Baruch read it in their ears. Now it came to pass, when they had heard all the word, they were afraid, both one and other. They were afraid, and rightly so. It's the word of Yah. And said unto Baruch, one thing you need to understand about the book of Jeremiah, it's not chronological. So we read some other passages earlier that the events were even subsequent to this. Because what this is before the first intrusion into Judah by Nebuchadnezzar. So Jeremiah was only warning them what was going to happen, but they didn't believe Jeremiah. It's like today when you say something as if you were to go out and say to people, well, who are the Jews today? Most people would show you geographical Israel. And they would say, these are the people there over in Israel. And don't get me wrong, there are people there, particularly those who are the beta Jews, and I mean the Phalasian Jews, I mean the Ethiopian Jews who are over there in Gaza and elsewhere, who we know are descendants of Queen of Sheba and Solomon. We know that. And some have concealed this. They don't want you to know that because they want you to remain in the valley, intellectual valley where they've placed you, while they have transfiguring experiences on the mountaintop intellectually. That's where they want you to be, in the valley. But this morning, the Ruach wants you to come out of the valley and understand who you are. Wants you to know that. And so the word says, verse 17, and they asked Baruch, saying, tell us now, how didst thou write these words at his mouth? How did you do it? Other than saying with a pen. He said, then the Baruch answered them, he pronounced all these words unto me with his mouth, and I wrote them with an ink in a book. I took dictation. That's what he's saying. Because he's locked up for preaching the truth. And when you preach the truth, you are going to step on toes. You're not doing it out of pride, or you're not doing it out of boastfulness. No, we ought not to do that. But we must, like John the Baptist, like Elijah, like Elisha, like Jeremiah, speak the truth. Then said the princes unto Baruch, verse 19, go hide thee, thou and Jeremiah, and let no man know where you are. Don't let them see you. Go and hide yourself. Because when the king hears this, he's going to be peeved. Hide yourself. And they went in to the king unto the court, but they laid up the roll in the chamber of Elishama the scribe, and told all the words of the ears of the king. So the king sent Jehudah. The king who? The king sent for this Kushite man of Judah from Ethiopia, whose ancestor includes Hezekiah and Solomon and King David. That's your lineage. Moses wrote this way back in Genesis chapter 10. Fetch the scroll, go and get it, Cushing. And he took it out of Elishama the scribe chamber, and Yehudi read it in the ears of the king and in the ears of all the princes which stood beside the king. You see, we are sometimes afraid because the people whom we speak to, they have rank. And we respect their rank more than we respect Yah. But we have to give Yah thanks for his ranking of us. So this man here, this Kushite man of Judah, read the scroll before the king of Judah. And let me emphasize again, you don't get called to read a document like this before the king of, well, any king, much less the king of Judah, if you were just a commoner. No, it wouldn't happen. So this Cushite man, may I say, your ancestor, one off, read before the king. Now the king sat in the winter house in the 9th month, and there was a fire in the earth burning before him. And it came to pass that when Yehudi had read 3 or 4 leaves, he cut it, the king, cut it with the penknife and cast it in the fire that was on the earth until all the roll was consumed in the fire was on the earth. Now, you got to ask yourself the question as to what was it that the king drank that night? Why was he so inebriated? Why he would cut up the word of Yah and throw it in the fire? It's a serious offense. Yet they were not afraid. That's what he said in verse 24. Not rent their garments, neither the king, nor any of his servants that heard of these words. Nevertheless, Elnathan and Delaiah and Gemariah had made intercessions to the king that he would not turn the roll, but he would not hear them. He cut methodically the scroll with his penknife and throw it into the fire. And perhaps it is so striking an incident for you to grasp, to plumb the magnitude of it, that you're asking, how could this be? I'll answer you. Every time you hear the word of Yah, it is true that the Sabbath ought to be kept and the feast days ought to be kept, and you reject those truths, you've pulled out your penknife and you too have cut the word of Yah and thrown it in the fire. Every time you hear the word of Yah and you say someone said that these things are done away with, when the word in Leviticus chapter 23 says, these are for all generations. And you say, I will not keep them. You have cut the word of Yah and burned it. And therefore, you are unwittingly, may I add, on your way to the lake of fire. Are you with me? And so, the word this morning wants us to know to really, really know that the people that we read of in the Word of Yah, they are not who other people tell us who they are. We read in Genesis chapter 10, 8 to 12, that Nimrod, son of Cush, the first on earth to become a mighty warrior. That's the Word said that, not me. We read of Agar, an Ethiopian maid given to Sarah. And Abraham had his way with her, and she produced a child. Africa marrying Shemite again. It's there in the Word. She was an Amitic person. And she was married, the Word says, to Abraham, who is Shemitic. And they produced Ishmael. It's in the Word. Senat, the daughter of Potiphar, another Egyptian, marrying Joseph. Or Joseph. Moshe had a Kushite wife, as I indicated before, and he became king of the Kushite. Phineas, remember that Phineas who threw his javelin in Numbers chapter 25? You remember that? The grandson of Aaron, the high priest? Well, the name Phineas is Egyptian. Yes. Literally means the Nubian or the dark-skinned one. That's what Phineas means. And as we indicated earlier, the prophet Zephaniah. And we deal with Yahudah. And we should mention Hebed Melech. You remember that man when Jeremiah fell into the pit? That Ethiopian man who saved Jeremiah? And when you read the book of Jeremiah, no other book is so replete with people of color as Jeremiah. And you get the impression that Jeremiah is trying to tell you something, isn't it? When you read the book of Lamentation, you know, he tells you how his skin is. We won't go there this morning, but just as a pointer as to what we're dealing with. And so the majority of the people we call Jews, or we ascribe the name to, they're not Jews because, one, they're not from the tribe of Judah. Amen. And the majority of them are from Turkey. They're from the Caucasus Mountain. That's why people call them Caucasian. Everything. And Yah says, I am going to round up my people. And he gave you the destinations in Isaiah 11:11, where they're from. But you know how mischievous empires have been. And so in the British Empire, we had Balfour, who took some people from Europe and brought them to Israel and say, here you are. But then, like the king of Judah, you might think, what are you saying? This is hard to swallow. This is hard to grasp. Moreover, for years, they've taught us differently. And therefore, what is it you're saying? I'm saying, when you read chapter 8 of the book of Acts, again, we're told that Philip saw an Ethiopian eunuch. And that Ethiopian eunuch was coming from the temple in Jerusalem. He was coming to worship, again in the 1st century. And he's reading from the book of Isaiah. An Ethiopian man reading a scroll. Now, hear me, the scrolls Not everybody had a scroll. But this Chancellor of the Exchequer of Queen Candace had a scroll of his own, and he was in a chariot. That was the Rolls Royce of antiquity. He was traveling with a retinue of people, and the Holy Spirit, the Ruach, directed Philip to go and speak to him. Because he wanted to know about the Messiah. Why did he want to know about the Messiah? Because the Messiah said, as we read earlier in Zephaniah chapter 3 and verse 10, that the people of Ethiopia is dispersed people. They would bring him an offering when he comes. What is that offering? Good question. I'm glad you asked. Come with me to Chronicles, that's 2 Chronicles chapter 35. 2 Chronicles chapter 35. And the word says, moreover, Josiah kept the Passover unto Yahweh in Jerusalem. He did what? Now, when I hear people say, well, we don't keep those things, we keep communion. Where in the Bible it says you should keep communion? He said, your ancestor Josiah and Zephaniah and Moses, they all kept the Passover. So that's why I lined out for you this morning, so you can see for yourself that you are from a lineage of people who believed in Yah and to be obedient to Yah. He said he kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month, and he set the priests in their charge and encouraged them to the service of the house of Yahweh, and said unto the Levites that taught all Israel, which were holy unto Yahweh, put the holy ark in the house which Solomon the son of David, king of Israel, did build. It shall not be a burden upon your shoulders. So Josiah told the priests to go and fetch the ark and put it in the temple. Now the question is, why is the ark not in the temple? Now, we don't have time to go there, but when you read the experience of Manasseh, who is the son of Hezekiah, who ruled after him, and he took the throne when he was 12 years old, he was such a wicked king that the priest took the ark of the covenant out of Jerusalem and brought it to Elephantine Island in Egypt and built a temple there where they worshipped. And that ark of the covenant was moved to Taniocaicus Island in Ethiopia, and then it was moved to Axum in Ethiopia after that. So when the word Zephaniah the Cushite is telling you that his ancestors and had the ark there, and now his descendants will bring the ark as an offering to Yeshua, that is exactly why that Ethiopian eunuch in the book of Acts chapter 8 had gone to Jerusalem to find out when the Messiah is coming. He was told by Philip, the Messiah has come, but he's coming back. Because we're now in the second Exodus. So come back with me to Jeremiah chapter 16. Jeremiah chapter 16. And we're going to start reading at verse 14 to bring this thing together now, to tie the ribbons and the ends and to put all the threads together so we can have a complete garment. Verse 14, therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that it shall no more be said that Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. He said that was the first Exodus. And you won't even so remember that, but more so the second Exodus. But Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands whither he had driven them, and I will bring them again in their land that I gave unto their father. Did you get that? He says, I will round them up and I will bring them back in the second Exodus. So I want you to really understand that when I talk about a second Exodus, it's a spiritual Exodus because the physical always comes before the spiritual. And so the Exodus is you and I are now grasping with the perspicuity of the word, the truth, the pure truth that we are among, yes, people, as Jews. But Israel, that's why Joseph had a multicolored coat, which signaled that anybody, anywhere, no matter what color you look like, if you accept Yeshua and accept him and adhere to his word, you are an Israelite by adoption. So once we make the distinction between the Jew and the Israelite, even though the Jew is an Israelite, but the Israelite is not necessarily a Jew. Ezekiel in chapter 37 says, in that day he will bring both Judah and Israel together and make them one stick. We've got to understand it. And that's what Paul is dealing with in Romans chapter 11. In verse 26, he says, then all Israel will be saved. Now, if you're a person in a church somewhere and you hear me speak like this, you will say, well, what about the church? Good question. Then I will remind you of Jeremiah 31 to 33. He says, in that day, I will make a covenant with Judah and with Israel. You say, what? Then I remind you of Hebrews 8 and verse 10. The covenant that I will make is not like the first one. I will make it with Israel and I will make it with Judah. And I'll give you another witness. Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 16. The covenant that I will make with them is the same that I made with their father. The difference is, I won't put it on tablets of stones, but I will put it in their hearts. Now, if you listen to that, three distinct texts saying Yah is going to make a covenant with Israel and with Judah, you must ask yourself, what about the church? Is the church not in covenant with Yah? Fair question? Well, this is what you want to know. When Yah sent his disciples out, he said to them, go and teach all nations what I have commanded you, because I only have one flock. He says, I have other sheep out there, but those sheep must come in. Come into where? Come into Israel. And I'm not talking about coming into geographic Israel. I'm talking about coming into spiritual, obedient Israel. Galatians 6:16. So when they come in, Paul says, then all Israel will be saved. So the church was not intended to be a church on its own. It was supposed to be like a vehicle, a carriage on a train that picks up people from all different locations and bring them to the destination of Israel. Why do you say that? I say that because of Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 23. It says, to the general assembly, one flock. And every church, every denomination is a member of that one flock. But that denomination is not a church all by itself. No. What am I saying? I'm saying the church is in the congregation, but the congregation is not the church. Are you with me? The word church is ecclesia. each of us, we're a church. So each week we come to congregate. The churches congregate in the assembly. That's what the word is trying to teach us. So when we go out on a limb and we break off that limb from the trunk, from the vine, we're no longer part of that vine when we break off the limb from the vine. That's why Yeshua said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. So each denomination, as we see it in the contemporary world, they have made themselves a limb, all by themselves, but not necessarily connected to the vine. So when Paul says, I see this olive tree, and it has two branches, one homeborn and one is adopted, engrafted in, then everybody will accept Yeshua. Only then are they Abraham's seed. So, as we have sought to do today, is to prove categorically, without doubt, that when the word says that Kushite Yahudah is a man of Judah, it's talking about you. You will remember that story as I close now, that when Absalom died, hanging in a tree, who was it who saw it? Who was it who took the message to David? The word says one man went to Joab and said, let me run and tell David. Joab said, you don't have a message. You can't run because you weren't there. You were not a recipient eyewitness. But he said, Kushite will run because Kushite was an eyewitness. Kushite saw it. Joab says, go and tell David what you've seen. Kushite. The point with that is that in these last days, Kushite is the one who is going to run with the message of Iyar. This gospel of the kingdom, not the gospel of the church, the gospel of the kingdom must be preached to all the world. Are you with me? The kingdom is not a democracy. The word of Iyar is law. The king's word is law. And we who here are living on the earth, we are just living in a colony. And that's why Yeshua said, when you pray, pray that thy kingdom, the influence of the kingdom of heaven will come on earth and influence your behavior. And you will be obedient to me, even as Kushite was. In Yeshua's name I pray. Hallelujah. Amen.
Amen.